Good morning again, and I hope you're all doing well. And welcome to my video on fugal writing. So I'm going to make two different versions of this video. One is going to be with myself demonstrating the fugal methods here at the keyboard, and in the other video that I'm going to make, it's going to just be the scores presented so that you can see how the process of fugal writing, with playing it versus just looking at it with the score. So, like I said, there are going to be two different versions of this video. And I'm going to look at two fugues, and one of them is my F minor fugue from my keyboard suite, and the other is the C sharp minor fugue. So, I'm not really qualified to teach fugal writing, say, like how you'd see it in a textbook. So, this isn't going to be saying how you should write a fugue, but it's simply sharing my own methods, and that's really all there is to it. So fugues will always start off with a subject. In this case, the subject is just 4 notes, and from those 4 notes, the problem is that you can't grasp if we're in F major. But it's not until we hear the entrance in C minor that we are in F minor instead of, say, F major. Now, with a 3-voice fugue, you have to introduce the subject in the tonic in whichever range you're really looking for. In this case, we're starting in the soprano in the alto, and we answer in the tenor, and the answer is always either a 5th above or a 4th below. So here we're in F minor, a 5th above or a 4th below would be the tonality of C minor. So let's just hear the subject and then the answer. It's just 4 notes. So after we hear the answer in C minor, the third answer would be back in the tonality in your home key of F minor. And depending on the motion of subject, answer, subject, you would have to continue either upwards or downwards. In this case, we hear the subject in the F above, middle C, then we have the subject with middle C. So properly, theoretically, you would have to have the subject answer in the voice below the answer. So let's just hear it until we reach the answer in F minor. And there we have it. Now, one of the other things in fugal writing that you can do is add different elements of the counter subject or any kind of thematic material much later on in the fugue. In this case, this is a very chromatic fugue, and chromatic steps are the half steps on the piano. So F to E natural is chromatic, E natural to E flat, chromatic, so on and so forth. And the concept of descending chromaticism, particularly in the Baroque era, is the concept of kind of grief or really mourning. So that works out very well in this case overall. So after the third answer in your tonic key, in this case F minor, you would have a sequence. And we'll get to sequences in a bit. Let's just hear from the third answer in F minor. So there we go. Bar 10 is the beginning of our sequence. And you can hear it in the bass after we have the subject again, that descending chromaticism. And then finally we fall to F. Now, the purpose of the sequence is to not only modulate to a different key. In this case, we're modulating to the relative major, which would be A flat major, because A flat major shares the same key signature as F minor, 4 flats, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. So this sequence in particular, it still consists of 3 voices. And let's just hear how we tie everything together. So we're going to hear from measure 6 all the way to 11, 12, 13, 14. And just, you'll hear how the sequence ties everything together. Sorry. Cadence all the way to A flat. Now, the motion in the bass is stepwise. And we'll hear this sequence much later in the fugue, but we'll get to that later. So, in fugal writing, essentially the rule is, well, it's not rule, but in the case of Bach, it's really copy and paste. You have the subject, and you can hear it in all different keys. So in this case, we have the subject in F minor, C minor, A flat, and that's really it. Certainly other composers have been able to develop fugal writing to the extent that you can have keys far beyond, not necessarily far beyond, but a little bit out of the realm of those keys. I think in one of my other discussion videos I referenced a couple Bach fugues where we hear 6 in the key of E minor. I think it's the wedge fugue that does that. Anyways, so now at bar 11, 12, 13, 14, at bar 14, we have the subject in A flat major, and it's introduced in the bass. And then we hear it a measure later in the alto. Is that the alto or is that the tenor? I can't really tell. Let's see if we can hear it again. There's our cadence to A flat. Now, we don't necessarily have to modulate to E flat, but I decided to do that because in the key of A flat, you have the 5th of that is E flat. You can introduce a flat 7 in that, which would be D flat, and it gives it this sort of muddy sound. Because this D flat can descend to C perfectly, but you can also make a deceptive cadence out of it, where instead of falling to A flat, the E flat can descend down to A, D flat can descend down to C, and one of the other E flats can even rise up to F. So instead of this kind of quality, we'd have this quality. It doesn't really fit. So let's just hear from bar 11, 12, 13, 14 to bar 16, 17, 18, 19, the beginning of 19. So listen for the subject again. Sorry. The subject is introduced again in the bass in bar 17. And immediately we fall back to the realm of E flat 7. Let's just hear that one more time. This tritone here it's a B flat 7 chord because we're going to E flat major. And then instead of E, would that be E natural flat? E flat natural? E flat normal? It's just E flat 7 now in bar 17, 18. Now after those introductions in A flat, E flat, we can now begin the conclusion of the fugue. So fugues, you have the opening section, if you will, which has all the answers, subject, answer, subject, and then you have your episodic material, which is where you can modulate to different keys if you want, and then really have different sections which call back to the first section. So in this case, this fugue has your initial execution of the subject, answer, subject, and then you have really two sections of episodes and then the conclusion. So this sequence, you'll recognize that the bass descends in downward motion, and let's just hear that alone. Now this calls back to the sequence in bar 10. Ascending to A flat, we descend. Oops. Instead of ascending to A flat, we descend to C, which is the 5 of F minor. So let's just hear the sequence as it is. Sorry. The subject is hidden twice. A little bit less conspicuous in bar 24. And in bar 25, we have what they call a pedal tone. And pedal tones are where, I'm going to move this closer just in case you can't hear me. I should have thought about that earlier. So pedal tones are instances where you have a suspended note tied over the course of many bars to further emphasize that that pedal tone is either the tonic or the dominant. Now in this case it's, I guess, unusual to have a fifth of the fifth be the pedal tone. So in the case of fifth of the fifth, F minor, fifth would be C minor, fifth of that would be G major. Let's just say G7. So bar 25, we are modulating back to C minor, so let's just play from 24 onwards. Oh, that's out of tune, I'm very sorry. Bar 27 is where things get very interesting in the middle voice. The subject is this sequence here. It's half-step motion, but it's also the fugue, I guess, turned backwards and also upside down, if that makes any amount of sense whatsoever. So let's just hear it from 24 until bar 30, no, yes, bar 30, all right. Now, bar 30 is where we kind of, this is the ending of the fugue. This is the very end. Not the very end, but you understand. So, the concept of hemiola, I don't know what it means off the top of my head, but hemiola is the phenomenon where the time signature in the piece of music doesn't change at all, but the rhythmic pulse behind what you're hearing changes in a way that it sounds like we're off by a beat. So, let's hear it. Beat 1, 2. Let me see if I can do that better. So, let's see. 1 E and 2 E and 1 E and 2 E and 1 E and 2 E and that's of course counting the subdivisions of 16th notes. The end of bar 31 makes it sound like we are on beat 1 even though we're not. It sounds almost as if this introduction of the subject in bar 31 is, as we heard it in the original, with an 8th note rest and then the subject, but it's not. Now, this brief cadence to B flat minor here is a deceptive cadence. And then we have a diminished, it's not a diminished cadence, it's more of a C7 in the beginning of bar 32. And then a passing tone of B flat, and then that was a little incorrect. Hold on. I'll link, I think, a description of hemiola down below. So, that was the F minor fugue. So now we're going to look at the C sharp minor fugue because the the concepts are essentially the same, but we're going to be working with not only a different subject, but also a different key. And probably while I'm talking about that, I'm going to remember dozens of things that I should have mentioned in this fugue. And like I said, if my explanations aren't really all that clear, it's probably because I'm not as well versed as I think I am in talking about fugal writing.